I'm going to give you a bag, but I don't want you to open the bag yet. I only want you to look inside. So, let's see. Worksheets. I left the worksheets on my desk. Okay, so there are some worksheets that I left on my desk upstairs. We'll do without. And most of the time, I teach with lecture. So one of the things that I do is, what we're about to do is something I do on the second day of my Principles of Economics classes. And then I actually did another one today that was another kind of active learning exercise. So I'm primarily a lecture person, but in certain instances there are some concepts that it just works to do an active learning kind of thing. I know that this is about space today, and when I offered to do this, this example is not about space so much, though it is an example of how you can work with the space you have, because this exercise is actually doable in any kind of setting. This kind of room is great. When I had about 35 students in this room, what we did was we basically took these tables and just cleared them off to the side and had the students cluster around the fixed tables, which gave us a lot of open floor space. Okay, so without any further ado, I'll just leap into this. What I want you to do is, who's playing? Okay, so let's see, you four, just gather around together at one place, and everyone else who's got a bag, sit around this table. Actually, why don't you sit here so that way the video is on. So you're sort of in the shot. Sort of.
Boy.
All right, so we have 1, 2, 5 here, 4 there. Okay, that's great. All right, now, the worksheet that I have is basically just a one-page worksheet. You put your name. And normally what I do is I assign you bags by having everyone in the class get up and come to the front, and I've got the bags numbered. And so this would be table 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And you get, I have them in order, so as they come forward, they're coming forward in the order that they've been sitting, which is with all my friends. And as they come up, I get a 1, my friend gets a 2, so that splits up little clusters of people, which does 2 things. Number 1, it gets them mingling with other people in the class, which is why it's such a good second day of class kind of exercise. The second thing it does is the trading that we're going to do here in a minute. You don't want them in little previously existing social networks. So you want to break up any social networks to help with this trading session. So what I'll do is I'll give everybody a bag and they'll go off to their areas, and I tell them meet the people that you're with. So it's a good breaking the ice exercise. And then I tell them, and you'll see on the sheet, it says round 1 and there's a blank. And what you're supposed to do now is look inside. But don't tell anyone what's there, don't dump it out, just look in there, you can nudge around inside. And then I say on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the worst and 10 being the best, how well do you like what you have? And well, how do we know what 1 is? I don't care. Whatever you think is a 1 or whatever you think a 10 is, as long as 10 is the best and 1 is the worst, write your number down. And if I had my worksheets, I'd have you write your number down. But, so maybe, should we pull out the little notepads that are in the folders and just write down, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate this first bundle?
We keep our sacks.
The sack will be yours at the end.
Yes!
What was the number?
You could write on your sack
Okay, I'm gonna write
if you
it,
want
yeah.
to. You just write it down, because I'm going to ask you for all this.
Okay.
So just write it down. And then once you've sort of written that down, I have them dump out their bags in front of themselves. And then you can look around and see what you have versus what everyone else has. And we do it again. Write down what you think about what you have.
Compared to everybody else?
Well, I don't usually phrase it that way because I don't want them thinking, but I just say, now that you see what everyone else has, do you still value the same? Is this better or worse?
Yeah, no.
But we're rating ours again.
And yeah, just so you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10.
I'm not happy. Jeez. I thought I was good until I looked at you guys.
And then normally what I do is to finish off round 2, because I collect the data. I've never done anything with it, but I have like semester's worth of sheets. Because I'm an economist, that's what we do, is we collect data. I have them write down what they have in their bundle as well. And so I have this notion at some point some kid in the econometrics class is going to do an estimation of the marginal utility of different candies by doing an econometric specification of Snickers versus York peppermint patties. Okay, so that's round 2. You basically you've seen it in your bag, you've now seen it comparing to everybody else, and we're ready for round 3, which is basically within your little groups, trade anything you want under any conditions you want to work out. If you see something someone else has and you like it better, try to work a deal for that, and then I just let them trade. So go for it.
Stand up, especially gray.
Okay, I would look at Twix. So Karen, what's it gonna take to get anything? Trade 3 and K.
Oh, this is, like, that's what I was looking at. That's what I was looking at.
You like crunches?
They're okay.
For a red job.
You like
Johnson? I like crunches.
You can have all of them.
I'll give you happy. That's okay. Okay, or would you rather blue?
M&M's for 2
Okay,
Yorks.
I'll take one crunch, one
Do you like
with chocolate.
those?
Do you like all jump wraps? Absolutely. No,
Yes.
I can quit right now.
My 8-year-old loves away. And then move on yours.
Everybody.
But
If I had to trade, I would get rid of a crunch for a Twix, but I'm okay with it.
Okay. I think.
I trade.
Could you go in?
What do you have?
Exactly.
One of these.
I can go that route for a Twix.
First Twix.
Sheets of this stuff. going back
For
to
semesters, yeah.
Wow.
I remember she.
I'm pretty
I'm gonna have to
No,
keep the
low
Twix.
Oh, no, I'm pretty content with what I got. I mean,
Are you interested in more jelly beans?
I'm keeping that stuff. It's data.
you got great kids and they last forever.
Yeah.
What?
Did you-
I haven't. No, I imagine just at some point having a student take it and use it as a paper and digitize it when the time comes. I know exactly how to do it and set it up, so it's just a matter of here,
I'm
do
thinking that I've
this.
got Friday night football later and you guys just say.
All right, so if you guys traded about as much as you can,
I still.
you guys have traded, are you still working over here?
Rounds. Do we
They may
do
still be
trade
working,
now?
I can't tell.
For a plane?
Yeah.
Oh, I like the York.
Okay,
I see
wait.
what you did
Yeah,
there.
yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
totally pass that over there.
Wow.
That would have been a windfall for you.
It would have been, right.
It was a windfall.
Whoa, what a trade.
Give me for
Whenever you basically
don't like
try to
it,
do
that's
as much as
saturated
possible, you go ahead and rate again. So that would be the end of round 3.
Man.
You guys,
Not
okay,
trend
what you
over
do at
here.
this point, what you do at this point is, once again, write down how you rate your bundle. And I would normally, once again, this is the end of, this is 3.
Oh,
Round 1 was looking at it inside,
Okay,
round 2 was
okay.
looking at it on the, in front of you, round 3 is after you've traded the first time.
gotcha.
And you just rate it again on a scale of 1 to 10.
You like it?
Now, normally what I do, I'm gonna stop it here. Normally what I do, especially with a larger group, right, is then we open up trade the whole class and everybody gets up and starts milling around. And that's where the space is much more relevant, okay? So, I'm not gonna do that, but I will at least work through the typical exercise. So, let's see, does this have the, oh good, it has that.
Did you explain, because of the mass population, the barriers to being able to make trades? I mean, are you
Well,
fixing
the
to go
thing
into
is,
that?
this year I'm in 408,
Right.
which has fixed tables, little tiny one up in there, it's full. And so people get stuck.
Yeah.
And so what happens when everybody gets up to trade is there are people who are basically landlocked And I just watch it happen. And at the end, when we do kind of a first round debrief, I point out that, that's a transaction cost that is relevant to trading. It's similar to being Paraguay, and you're landlocked. You can't get to the ocean unless you go through another country. Okay, so we don't seem to have markers up here.
That's right.
Markers? All right, well, let me have a pen.
You want to use a Docam?
No, no, that's too high tech. All right, so what we can do, what I do then is up on the board, I would just put round 1 on the board, and I mean, this is like technology for the sake of using technology. We should have a marker. No, we don't need one. We'll just do it here because y'all are close enough and it's a small enough group. So what I want you to just go around and each of you tell me what your first round 1 score was.
Okay, 8, 7, 6, 6,
9,
3, 9.5.
9.
8.
This is the first round.
Round. yeah.
Okay, round 2.
7, 8, 4, 4,
8.
4.
6.
Oh, wait.
Okay,
Who had the 3 before?
I do.
Okay, go.
4.
8,
8.
Yeah, see, I had a 6 in there.
Yeah.
That was your round 2?
Yeah, round 2.
Round 2 was a 6. My
Okay.
round 1 was an 8.
Okay. And then round 3?
9, 9,
7.
9,
9.5.
9.
9.5.
9.
Yeah, I had 9 plus, so we'll call that a half.
Okay. So then what I do is, in front of everybody, I prove them I can do math faster than they can. And I add it all up. So we add these up, 15, 21, 27, 36, 39, 65 and a half.
Oh,
Ooh, that's interesting. 18, 25, 80 plus. Okay, so basically what we got was at the end of round 1, all of your numbers combined added up to 65 and a half. At the end of the second round, when you sort of saw what everyone else had, it dropped to 57, which means that the envy effect dominated in this room. Surprisingly, that is not what always happens with the students. Often it balances out. You get almost the same. There's the gee, I really like what I have even better now offsets the envy effect. So the other thing with students that didn't happen with you guys is they're much more likely to go to 10 here. Students will say 10, free candy in class. Our third round, we went from a 57 in the second round to 80 plus.
Yeah.
Okay, and then normally what then happens is you get up and trade again, and the next number is even higher. And that's the exercise. Okay, it works for several reasons. Number one, you don't have to give extra credit because the incentive is get candy. The problem you'll have with it is there will often be 1 or 2 people in the room who just don't like candy. There was one guy who actually traded his entire bag for a hug. But he marked it up. Okay, so his bundle was now no candy and 1 hug, which he liked better than we started with. What do we use it for in economics? Right, is to teach the very most basic point that you get gains from trade. That voluntary trade works to create value because no one's willing to trade unless I like better what you have than what I have, and it's mutual. So voluntary trades, instead of being a zero-sum game, as many people out there kind of think of it as being, voluntary trades actually result in higher social value, which we are approximating with these numbers you're putting, right? And every one of you probably went up. Yeah, every one of you went up from round 2 to round 3. And typically if we did a round 4, you would either stay the same or go up. And we can emphasize, there are lots of things that you can do here, and I've never really done this very scientifically. But I've created like little sugar islands where one group has all Skittles and Starbursts and Jolly Ranchers and no chocolate. And then they find out that like the whole rest of the room doesn't have that. And then they're much happier Because even if they like the chocolate candy, right, oh, this is terrible, and then they find out that it's really valuable when they go find the right trading partners. And so it emphasizes the role of the scope of the market, that as that expands, your trading opportunities expand. We can do all sorts of things. I usually throw in a comment on how nobody really ever seems to think about stealing other people's candy. Just straight up theft. Why is that? And we talk about, and that leads into a talk on the second day of class about the role of institutions in providing a framework for trading in a market, and how economists in the supply and demand model will take those institutions for granted. And we just assume they exist and that the market trading works, but it's embedded on a notion of property rights. If we don't have property and contract enforcement, which we didn't have here, right, then you're probably importing it from the culture that you live in, so that there's this cultural norm that's coming in, that we don't steal, we respect other people's stuff. You probably got very proprietary once you had the bag in your hands. This is now mine, right? And whatever mine means in our society, it attached to what was in the bag for you. And that's again another thing that we can talk about. So you can use these kinds of exercises. The first and foremost purpose is how does value get created in society, and pointing out to trade as being, and reallocating, because we got a better rating of the candy without changing the amount of the candy in the room. All we did was move it around, and we moved it around according to a very decentralized process, which was let you decide if you want to trade. There are probably still some potential trades that we haven't exploited, but everyone's still better off at the end, and that's one of the arguments in favor of allowing markets to function as unfettered as possible, as long as you also have this kind of base level of property right protection, contract, and so forth. And what it does, I think, is doing it this way shows them in a way that they would never otherwise believe, that voluntary trade can lead to everybody being happier, right? Not just a few people who are the winners and the rest of them are the losers, right? Everybody's happier if the trade was voluntary. So when you start bringing government into it, and government programs are going to do some reallocation, there's not the same guarantee, because it's not voluntary. And that leads later on into not only the semester, but upper level classes. I go back to this in some of my upper level classes and say, look, we're now talking about something that's happening that facilitates involuntary trade. And an involuntary trade, as we know from the day we traded candy, all you people that had me, right, could make us worse off. And so those are some things we emphasize. And what I think one of the benefits to this kind of an experiment in an econ class is that it teaches a concept to people in a way that they may not have believed. If I just stood up and said, hey, voluntary trade, everyone's better off. I mean, intellectually, you can understand, but you may not believe me. Right, well, he's just saying that, I need to know for the test. But when you do it yourself and you've actually graded your own bundle up, right, like, well, maybe there is something to this idea. Just a couple of points as follow-up. We find that these kinds of activities are great for icebreakers. So any kind of class can do this. There probably are, and this is very tailored to an economics class. So I don't know how else you would modify the idea of trading and so forth for a different business class. And I think it would vary from class to class.
Worse in a communication class, because I do something similar, it's just that I don't do it with candy.
Yeah.
But I have some things out there and everyone has what they have, and then they look around and then they trade with the people near them, and then they hold up things, anybody want this for whatever, and so then there's a macro level of
Right.
trading. And then at the end it's like, okay, so if I wanted to teach people this thing, the best way to communicate it was by having people actually do it. And so when you're communicating, it isn't all just lecture, it isn't all just talking. The first day of class, I have them get out of their comfort zones, sitting with their friends, and alphabetize themselves from A to B, get in front of the room non-verbally, so they can't talk. They barely know each other. So, they're out there doing L and M and whatever, and they're all quiet, and they do it, and then I had them sit down in 303 Cashin, so that in teams like this, because I do them very scientifically by alphabet, so it shows I'm not putting anybody for any other reason, and they totally accept the teens. And then they're in the rows like this, and then they turn and face each other to work on this when they build their dynamic, team dynamic towers. So if doing all these things to show them you can communicate lots of ways besides the traditional ways. And so doing an exercise like this really works.
Yeah, I advise a lot of students, and they take a course over in the communication department called nonverbal communication. And I've always imagined how great that must be. Like, you could do a nonverbal communication class and nobody talks the whole semester. I don't think that's what happens.
And you budge. It's
Yeah.
really, it's challenging.
As an icebreaker, it really works well. I mean, I did not come up with this idea, even within our department. John Pashada, I think, was the first one to really bring in this specific idea. And he would go to the Dollar Tree and buy one item for every person in the room, and for $1, right? And then they could trade that way. Jim Henderson, I think, had the idea of using candy, and candy works well because it's generally something the students value. Secondly, in pieces like this, you can break it apart, right? You're not trading one for one item. You can do different levels of trading. Jim Henderson usually requires them to write down the name of at least one other person that they traded with, so that it's an ice-breaking activity. I have not done that largely because the students that I'm working with often have already met each other. It's a group coming out of Business Fellows and University Scholars and Honors, so they've already kind of interacted to some degree, even as freshmen. So I haven't made them write names down, but it's definitely an option. As far as how you do this in an academic setting, I mean, the point of this is not just so we can have fun and trade candy, right? The point of it is to teach this particular concept as well as some subsidiary lessons. It's almost always a bad idea to teach them the theory before they do the activity. You want them to do the activity without really knowing exactly what they're doing. In econ, it's a little hard because about half of them have taken the stuff before, so they know, oh, I know what this is for. Yeah, you're a super smart kid. Just eat your candy, right? But do that, then you bring the theory back in, and we've done this from how I do it, which is a couple of demonstrations throughout the semester, all the way to Tisha Emerson, and when he was here, Beck Taylor taught a semester that they were doing research on with a textbook by Ted Bergstrom and somebody else that is 15 chapters, one per week, experiment every week. Come in on a Monday, do the experiment. Come in on Wednesday, get the lecture. Come in on Friday, having done the homework and gone over it. And it's all based on the results from the first experiment. And they taught the whole semester of microeconomics that way. It works really well because they learn the things they learn more deeply. It has drawbacks because you can't cover as much. Right? And that's the trade-off. These are time consuming. I can explain the idea faster than we can do it, but my sense is that for this activity, I devote the second day of class to it because not that much happens the second day of class anyway. First day of class, you're still sort of, everyone's wibbly wobbly, so second day is generally best. The one I did today was about a 15-minute activity where we did a production exercise, and it was a lead into total product production functions and leading that into cost functions. And so what I do is I have them do this little activity. I get the numbers from what they did, and on Monday when I come back, we're going to start building cost tables that are based on the production information that they did in class. So I'm going to say, okay, let's assume that each minute of labor in our exercise was $4, and then there are $20 fixed costs. Okay. Let's construct this whole cost table that's in our textbook. And instead of it being some made up thing with totally made up numbers, it's no, these are your production numbers. And I'm making up the prices, sure. But it changes from the 905 to the 1010 class. And it changes from semester to semester because I'm taking whatever they had and showing them that there is a linkage between the production technology that you guys chose to use in this little simple game we played, to the productivity of it, to the cost of each unit if we use these prices. So these are just a couple of ideas. I think I'll probably kick it back to let you manage the brainstorming, because I think the issue now is how would you take something like this out of my discipline specifically?
Right, exactly, yes.
Yeah.
May I ask one quick question?
Sure.
Have you tried using candy like this and then throwing some sugar-free candy in there and then putting some restrictions?
I have not. There are two problems I run into. Number one is the student just doesn't like candy. Number two, peanut allergies.
Yes.
And so I normally try to remember, and sometimes I do well, and sometimes I don't. Say, does anybody have really bad peanut allergies? And I'll have someone raise their hand. Say, okay, how bad? Can you be in the room with it? You know, if it stays wrapped and you don't touch it, and we establish guidelines and make sure that they understand that there's going to be some peanuts in the room and that the people around them are aware, and it hasn't been a problem. I have not tried anything with sugar-free candy. I don't know whether that would be successful or not. I mean, I suspect what we would find is people would view it as worse than a Starburst.
Well, it's because it has sugar.
If you love
I'll take
Starburst,
all of the Starburst.
if you love Starburst, then this game is for you, because like the vast majority of students do not like them. They view them as trash candy. You can take one little piece of chocolate and trade for every Starburst they have. Looks like you might have done it with Jolly Ranchers. And then you got the York trade was the genius move over here. Okay.
I was the one kid that liked the Hershey Special Dark, so I could always clean
oh,
house
yeah,
at
Halloween.
Halloween.
Right.
Because nobody wanted the Hershey Special Dark.
So maybe this is just sort of reliving Halloween for people, right? Like you got candy and then you traded with your friends.
Have you experimented with having things of different value? So you have some Starbucks gift cards, you have some candy, maybe have fruit, I don't know, have you experimented?
No,
It further?
candy works for the reason it makes us fat. It's really cheap. And so, I mean, my department chair would reimburse me for this, but I don't want to go through the rigmarole of, okay, now that I've filed an expense report, it's now technically Baylor's candy, so what do we do with it? And so I just buy it.
Well, I think actually doing it where the things are more of a common value is better, because then you're really talking about preferences, which is what trade is about.
Yeah.
Not like, this is worth 3 of these,
Right.
and therefore I'll go for this even if I don't want it, because I can sell it to somebody else.
Yeah, so I mean, I could give somebody an apple.
Right.
I mean, we
Right.
could, that would be a way to
This
do
apple might be the
it.
same cost as this set of candy.
Yeah, so we might be able to put an apple or some grapes in there. Honestly, that just starts to be too much work to go shopping for all.
Yeah.
Then you get, plus, I mean, these are wrapped.
Yeah.
There's not a hygiene issue.
Sure, you have a problem if you had grapes in the classroom.
His real problem with the chocolate in the classroom that's now being videotaped.
Nobody's eating any.
And of course, when they ask, can we eat our candy? I say no. The dean wants you only to drink water in the classrooms. You're going to have to save this to later. And they definitely do not eat their candy ever during class. Never, never, never do they eat the candy. No. Who's petting me?
I was wondering if you had ever tried to do like the tariff aspect in terms of that's a different country, this is a different country, and adding some additional aspects.
No, because I'm not to that.
No.
I mean, I think this is where the notion of teaching through experiments can come in.
Mm-hmm.
There are experiments that you can do that are sort of there's a minimum wage experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And so you impose a minimum wage, and then all of a sudden you find these people over here can't find work. And there's this pool of unemployed, and it grows. And so there are experiments like that can be run. Let me mention, there are a number of websites, and Tisha has a chapter that Tisha's the expert on this kind of stuff for teaching economics with experiments and other kinds of active learning. See if she'll allow the chapter to be sent. She sent me a copy of her chapter from a recent handbook kind of thing. It has citations to Charles Holt's website, especially at the UVA. You can do all of this with online kinds of experiments, which means you don't even have to come to class. People can just log in on the internet and be from anywhere. I like to do it in class because I view it as the social tie building as well as just the educational aspect, and it's fun. So I like to do things that are fun. I don't do it all that often, so when we do it, it's kind of like, oh good, we get to do something different today. You can certainly do more of it than I do, and largely the reason I don't do it is because I'm trading off coverage versus that. So.
I think one of the really strong things about it, and it's something I've noticed in my class too, I mean, you're concerned about that it takes more time, but the point is not what you're teaching, it's what they're learning.
Yes.
You can teach and teach and teach, and if they walk out of there and all they've done is learn it for the test, but they haven't really learned it,
That's right.
what have you accomplished in the time
Right.
you've taken?
Yeah.
Whereas if they actually learn it, and if you're doing it in front of everybody, if you're doing it just on your own, like at home, and then you're coming in to talk about a flipped classroom style, you may not really be convinced, well, I must have done something wrong because it goes against what I thought should happen. But if it's right out there and everyone sees it, and yet the aha moment can't be denied,
Yeah.
Yeah.
then the learning actually happens.
And the
What really
research
is
on
like-
the research on experiments basically is along that line. There's nothing to indicate the students do worse on post-course evaluations of overall knowledge of the subject matter of microeconomics when they've taken a micro class. Some suggest that they do better, even if you've had reduction in coverage, right? What it really shows is basically that students finishing a Principles of Microeconomics course still know a pathetically small amount of microeconomics. And I don't really know what to do about that. But I think that the experimental approach does do a good job of teaching the things that the experiment's designed to teach. And like I said, I think that they believe it in ways that they don't do if they're not actively engaged in it. And when they do it themselves and trade themselves and see it emerge, then all of a sudden it's like, well, maybe this is real.
Yeah, you're forcing them to that level of application.
Right.
On Bloom's taxonomy, so
Yeah.
some of that higher order thinking.
Yeah. Okay, am I finished?
Sure,
Okay.
thank you.
I mean, I'll answer
Excellent.
more.